Welcome to the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast with Lisa Bolton and Melissa Hartfield. We're two women who are artists and entrepreneurs, and yes, those two things can go together. This podcast is for the artists, the creators, and the makers who want to find a way to make a living creating what they love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 10 of the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast. I am your co-host, Melissa, along with my lovely co-host, Lisa. Hey, Lisa.
Hello.
And guess what? We're in double digits.
Woohoo!
This week. I know, episode number 10. And today we're going to be talking about how to create a workspace at home. It's been on our list of episodes to do for a while, but it's pretty timely given what's in the world right now. We're recording this in late April 2020 in the midst of the pandemic.
The pandemic. Oh. It's an odd time right now.
It is. So we know both of us have worked from home for a long time. We're quite comfortable with the whole work from home situation. But we know that there are a lot of you out there who are working from home for the first time, or maybe for the first time where it's been an extended work at home. A lot of creatives work from home anyway, and I don't know about you, but I'm mildly obsessed with other people's workspaces. We thought this would be a fun topic to cover this week. Actually, this month, the month of May, we are talking about working from home.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about, working from home, and then talk a little bit about managing distractions, talk a bit about batching and productivity. So we've kind of got a whole theme going for May of being what it's like to work from home and how you can sort of do it in the most efficient way, most inspiring way.
So today we're going to focus on creating a workspace at home. And we're hoping that for those of you who are working from home for the first time, maybe this will give you some ideas of how you can create a space that is both appealing and functional. For those of you who are just like us, who've been working from home for a long time, but are just always really curious to find out what other people have their setup looking like and to see if you can come up with some new ideas. And I'm always kind of rejigging my setup. I think you do too. Mm-hmm. So let's dive in.
Absolutely. I do. My husband always laughs at me because I am constantly, he'll walk into my office. He's like, "You've moved things around." And sometimes I just need everything to, and it's a very small space. I'm fortunate to have a dedicated room, a small room, but it's a room nonetheless with a door, which I appreciate is advantageous and can be a bit of a luxury depending on your space. But yeah, just sometimes moving things around, which I actually recently did during this pandemic, has changed entirely. And even seasonally, I find I need to change things around. So whether I'm facing the window or it's coming from the side or it's behind me, I think I will do that actually even with the seasons. So I'm very guilty for always looking for the perfect way to set it up.
Yeah, and we should just mention that because everybody has a different living situation. And I've been working from home for over 10 years now. You've been working from home almost that long as Mateo's been around.
100%, yeah.
Our workspaces have evolved. If you live in a very urban area and maybe you're in a 600 square foot apartment, or you've got roommates, or you have children running around, or you're lucky enough to have a spare bedroom or a corner in your bedroom. Like, there's so many different ways that you can work from home, create from home, but we just want to kind of make it clear that the lack of space shouldn't stop you. There's always a way to create a little corner somewhere that you can work out of. I think sometimes people hold back a little bit because they're like, oh, I don't really have the space, or I don't, I can't paint because I don't have the space to do this, or I can't take photos because I don't, there's always a way to kind of work around it and create your own little nook. And, as your situation changes, maybe you'll be blessed with more space. I mean, I'm still waiting for the day where I can have a studio that's in a separate room. My she shed.
Yes.
I'm waiting to have a she shed.
Oh, just don't even go down that rabbit hole on Pinterest or YouTube. And there are some she sheds out there that are spectacular.
I was walking Sam yesterday, and this park that we go through, there's some houses that back out onto it, and they have beautiful large yards. They're houses from the 70s, back when a big yard was standard. And some of them have like these really cute little sheds out in the backyard. I don't know what they're using them for, but they're really well maintained, and they're not like your average garden shed. Like they're a proper structure. I drool every time I see
I
them. I
know
just
that is the dream. That is the
what
dream.
I could do with that.
Yeah, I think the key is like actually designating a space in your house, designate it as your own, that you know that you can be productive in, that you can be focused in, that you can be inspired in, but it's always sort of your space, even if that means that you have to pack it up every day and put it away. Because I recognize that some people do work from the kitchen table or from a nook in the landing or wherever it might be. But being able to either unroll it and unfold it and have it be your space for the time that you want it to be and put it away, or that just every day it's always your space, I think having that set out is kind of the first step, with the she shed being the ultimate ultimate dream.
Yeah, all that to say is that just don't be discouraged if you feel like you don't have a big space where you can't spread out. Very few people start out with that. And if you do start out with that, then you're very lucky. My first workspace was in the basement. It had virtually zero natural light, which is hard when you're a visual artist. It was very cozy, but there's things about that space that I actually do miss. And my new space is much brighter and lighter, and it's upstairs, and situations change. And you'll find also, I think, as you grow older, that how you work evolves, and what worked for you 2 or 3 years ago may just no longer really fit with how you work today. So I think that's a really important thing to kind of keep in mind, is that your space can be flexible. It's not carved in stone, and don't be afraid to move things around and try new things and try new setups and see what works best for you.
I think sometimes too, like in this pandemic that we're in right now, it's also determining if it's going to be more of a short-term location or a long-term location. So I think if you're listening to this in sort of current time, you might just be looking for a short-term setup, and the effort, the money, the resource, the time that you put into setting up that space right now, if you know it's only going to be short term, might look a little different than if you're doing what both you and I did and made, major career choice changes to set up a permanent work from home situation. So the choices or the ways in which you kind of set up will impact that, I think. But I think what you and I are talking about today is more of a long-term work from home situation.
Yeah, I think so. And if you're one of those people that's listening who has like a side hustle where you're a creative for hire on the side, but you have a day job, and you've been kind of thinking about whether or not you should quit your day job and do this full time, and what it would be like to have that opportunity to work from home all the time, like this is a good opportunity to kind of get a really good feel for like, what would your day be like if you were working from home? Like where would your workspace be? How would you set it up? Now you're getting to do almost like a little bit of a trial run.
It's a great, that's a really good point, because when I was reading a lot about different ways that people set up their workspaces at home, there was a lot of discussion around, make sure it's distraction free. And I thought, you know what, that's true. But having spent the last month at home, and I'm both working from home and working on helping my son learn at home, and I'm very careful not to use the word homeschool, because I recognize that's a very different distinction between homeschooling and learning at home right now during a crisis. So what we're doing is learning at home. But I've noticed that sometimes we actually do need to be in the zones that have distractions. So I know that either him and I have a designated spot upstairs when we're working, but when I was writing my book, or when I edit our podcast, sometimes I take my laptop and I like to go sit in the kitchen or the living room where there's a bit of buzz going on and things happening. So this is a great time to test whether you like a distraction-free zone or not. You might be the kind of person who wants to be able to have a little bit, not to be too quiet. I equate it to working from a coffee shop versus working from a quiet office with the door closed. And so having a bit of flexibility in how you work from home too, I think, is important.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite things to do if I'm struggling, or I'm just kind of like, have those moments where you're working and it's just not clicking, or you're not really getting into the zone or whatever. And sometimes all it is like picking up my laptop and leaving my office/studio and like just going and sitting on the couch or sitting at the kitchen table and just working on email for an hour. And sometimes just getting up and moving and being in a slightly different environment with a different view and different light and different noises can really be the little kickstart I need to get back into what I'm doing.
Yeah. So as much as you want to designate a space, I do think having that flexibility is important.
Yeah, and we can't work from coffee shops right now, but if I need to really settle into a writing groove or an email groove, I go to a cafe. It's like a switch flicks in my
It's
head.
the
That's what
hardest
they
thing
say.
to say. The switch flips. I know.
I had to think about that for a minute. But yeah, and it's also kind of like I think when I'm working in a coffee shop, I'm less likely to go goof around on social media because I don't want people looking over my shoulder going, "Oh, she's just scrolling through Facebook."
It's hilarious. You're accountable to perfect strangers.
Exactly. Whatever works, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's something about being in a cafe. I think it's just the music, the sound of the espresso machines, and just the sort of the dull hum in the background of people talking. I don't know. It's very
Mm-hmm.
calming for me. So yeah, you moving around there's nothing wrong with just because you have a designated space doesn't mean you have to sit in it for 8 hours a day.
Well, no, it could be quite isolating. For myself, that was a big transition moving from an office environment. And I literally, my last job in the corporate environment was I ran a contact center, a call center with,
Oh, that's
120 people. Yeah. So first off, open work environment. Everyone's on the same floor. There's no doors. We are all together and like walking through the space. I'm saying hello to 50 people between here and the washroom. So there's just constant human energy. And after I chose to work from home, there was an isolation that I felt it was really hard to break from. And I needed that ability to, your point, go to a coffee shop or sit in an environment where I'm watching humans walk by and interact with one another, even if I don't want to interact with them. But it can feel very quiet. I would sometimes take a phone call and the person would say, "Your voice is raspy." I'm like, "Well, I haven't spoken in 4 hours." So it's like I need to speak out loud. And yeah, it's kind of there's a bit of the isolation where, again, like being distraction free, all fine and good, but sometimes that isolation can take a bit of time to adjust to. And now I feel really good about it. And I know when I need to plug in and reach out to people or go to a coffee shop or go sit outside to work. Other times then I can work in isolation. That's okay as well. So yeah, just being self-aware of that and that there is going to be a transition period.
So, what do you think for you is like the most important thing in your workspace for you to be productive?
Yeah. Okay. So I was trying to think of some of the things like, because I feel like I've got my space right now where I really like it. And
This week anyway, right?
yeah. That's so funny. And I feel like there's two broad categories, and maybe we can talk about both of them, but I would say it's the ambiance as it relates to the senses. So it's the light, it's what it smells like, it's the feel of the different surfaces I have. There's just a feeling of ambiance. And the other big bucket item is technology. I made the mistake of not getting my technology set up right and efficient with the right cords and the Wi-Fi and the speed of it and surge protectors and the printer I want. Like that whole bucket, I think I band-aided that for too long. It was a daily frustration or time waster. And so the most important thing I would say is ambiance and technology. Those are my two things I would say to anybody if you're setting up for home. Invest in those two things, and I think the productivity, inspiration, the focus will come out of that.
Definitely. The tech one for sure.
Ugh.
That was one that I spent a lot of money on before I quit my job because
Mhm.
I think probably because I worked in IT, like I just knew how crucial tech was to being able to do your job every day. Yeah, so I spent a lot of money on the computer, especially being a graphic designer. Like I had very specific computer needs, and I spent a lot of money on all that before I quit, just to make sure that I had what I needed. Yeah, because when tech doesn't work,
Ugh.
it drives you bonkers.
So to me, like tech is like when you need to prep a room before you paint it, like where you have to tape all the stuff off and you have to get everything right. And it's like not fun.
No, it's not fun at all.
You put all this effort into, there's no real, no one can visually see it at the end, all that little nitty gritty work that you went into. And yet it pays off in spades when you like sit down and everything works and cords are tucked away or, Wi-Fi strong. And it's so important.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things that we all need to have.
Hmm.
regardless of what you do. It's just a part of our lives. And so if it doesn't work, we always used to joke like nobody notices the IT department when everything's working.
That's so
They're just
true.
like, why do we have an IT department? They don't do anything. But the minute something stops working, like, oh my God, where are the IT people? Like,
It's exactly right. And these days with mobility, I would even extend tech into having your devices synced properly so that if you do
mhm.
want to pick up, like if you work off a desktop and you do want to pick up and go to a coffee shop, like do you have that ability to plug in through a mobile device, whether it be your phone or an iPad or whatever, and just seamlessly go do that without it being like, oh, I don't have my password for that, or these things aren't synced, or I don't know the
Yeah,
app.
yeah, absolutely. It's not fun and it's not glamorous and it's not sexy at all. But
No.
when it doesn't work, it just makes you want to rip your hair out.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah. But I would say if that's your first thing, like spend the
Yeah.
time doing that.
And if you are somebody who likes to move around, I work on an iMac, I work on a MacBook Air, I work on an iPad and an iPhone. And I love the fact that I can go from one browser to the next and have all my tabs be there. And, that I can send stuff through airdrops and like just stuff like that. Like it just,
Hmm.
oh, it's so nice when it's all working.
Yeah. As much as it's not the sexy part, it definitely is right up there with fun stuff. So that ambiance piece of like picking out a few fun touches for your space. But for me, walking into a space and it making me feel happy when I open the door to my office, I'm like, oh, this feels like my time, my place to do my work. It has nothing to do with being a mom or a wife or having any of the other responsibilities that I have, that it's really just about like what I'm here to do. And there's something about that. I wouldn't call it frivolous. I think it's fun to go and shop for that stuff, but it becomes aggregate of it all coming together, all those little touches. It's not one specific thing that makes the space your own and inspiring. I think it's when all of those little things are put together and you walk into your space and it kind of lifts you up, that is worth putting time into.
That's my favorite part about my space. I just like how it makes me feel when I walk into it. And I definitely notice when it starts to get not, I can work with a certain amount of clutter. It's the type of clutter that
Mm-hmm.
will drive me around the bend. And if it gets to be the wrong type of clutter, I find myself avoiding my office like the plague. Like I just walking past the door and seeing inside just makes me go, ugh. It's like I'm gonna look at the
Go
kitchen
work at
table
the kitchen
today.
table. Guilty as charged.
Um, and that's when I know that I need to spend some quality time cleaning things out. But one of the things that I've done, we talked about Austin Kleon a few episodes ago, but when he wrote Steal Like an Artist, he talked about his work setup, and he does this thing where he has a digital desk and an analog desk. And when I read this, I fell in love with this, and that is actually how I have had my space set up for years now. I have a digital desk and I have an analog desk, and it's funny. Last week I was just thinking I might flip them around, but
Like
we'll see.
physically, you have two separate spaces within your office?
Yes. So I don't have a very big office. I have two desks. One is where my iMac and my laptop sit. It's where my phone hangs out. It's where I charge things while I'm working. And the other one is a much smaller desk, and it's my analog desk. And no devices of any kind are allowed on my analog desk. It is 100% where I do things with my hands.
I
So it's
love that.
yeah, and it's the only exception I will make is occasionally if I'm working on an illustration or a design, like a doodle or something, I may let myself have my iPad on there and I'll have Netflix in the background or music in the background, but that's it. And it's where I keep all my art supplies. It's got all my markers, like all the papers, everything that I would use to actually create physical things. I don't even know what the word for it is, but there's something very relaxing or soothing about having this space where nothing can ping at me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no I've lost my words. Interruptions, no email interruptions, no phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
no text messages, nothing. And I can really lose myself in what I'm doing and just become completely absorbed in what I'm working on. And there's something it's like a form of deep work, and there's just something about it that is my brain needs that. Yeah. So, and I love it. When I read that, I was just like, this is brilliant.
You know, it really speaks to all of the hats. Like, I think if I really draw upon my entrepreneurial background and we talk a lot about all of the hats that an entrepreneur, a small business owner, especially a single owner business, a one owner business has to wear. And so if you take a look, and I always try to draw parallels from a large company. So if you look at a large company, you know, it's got different floors for different activities. So you've got HRs on one floor and IT's on another floor and marketing's on another floor. So when you're in those spaces, like I remember being in corporate where if I had to meet with marketing, I went to the marketing floor and it felt very artistic and creative, and there was a different feel than when I went to perhaps an HR floor, which maybe felt a little bit more proper, a little bit more, I would say, straight, conservative. And you kind of moved into those zones when you were on those floors and in those spaces. But when you're an entrepreneur and you have to wear all the hats, that's so true, because I don't have that set up. And I do feel like if I'm working on writing over here and then there's something is pinging at me or my phone rings, or I've kind of got all the departments in my office at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to deal with those departments right now. And it's hard. And I think that's so interesting. But by setting up those two desks, you're kind of saying like, I'm in this department right now and I will come back to that one when the time is right or when I'm scheduled to. And I really like that distinction. And I think you could do that no matter how big a space you have. Like, I do think if you set up properly in such a way that things could be moved, even if they were moved aside very quickly and efficiently, if you didn't have space for two desks, or you decided that the kitchen table was where you did your analog and your digital might stay up, you know, in your more dedicated space. Or I think that would be a really good evaluation question for people to ask themselves, if that would make a difference in their workflow.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for somebody who is like an artist, it makes so much sense. But yeah, I think you could do it for pretty much anything. So we just all have those pieces that of what we do, that having no digital interruptions is really so necessary to our productivity, even if we don't always make it happen.
But sometimes just changing the physical space, as opposed, you'll read things about, you know, turn off your notifications or delete the app or whatever. And that's totally, I think those work too. But yeah, sometimes actually I think your brain can almost shift when it's like, oh, I'm in the space where I do this now. I think there's something cognitively that can shift with that.
In my space, the two desks back onto each other. So if I am sitting at my analog desk, my back is physically to my digital desk. I can't even look at it. So obviously not everybody's going to have that luxury, but yeah, I think you really could. Like, even if it's just, you know, my previous space, I had, and I wish I could have this in my current space, but I had my desk, and then behind me, I had two folding table bases, like the legs, and I just had a big wooden sheet of plywood on top of it. And that was like my somewhat of an analog desk. And it had like, it didn't look appealing. I put like a cloth over.
Kind of reminds me of like a drafting table though. Like
almost.
Yeah.
And it was high enough that I could sit at it and I could stand at it, which I loved. My current one, I have to sit. I loved it. And it was a much smaller space than what I have now, but I was able to create this like little corner where I could be away from my computer. And I'm just thinking, like, I know if you have like a large closet and instead of having like your dresser in your bedroom, could you move the dresser into the closet and give yourself some extra space in the bedroom to set up a small desk or table where you do your analog? Or could you put the table in the closet? Or
yeah, like I wrote down a few places. Like my office has been in a couple different homes that we've lived in over the years. My office has been in various nooks and crannies. But you can really, if you do a little walk around your house and you think about all the unused spaces or the spaces that aren't really being fully utilized, that you could put something that's even narrow. Like I think sometimes we think of desks, we think of like the big bulky L shape or U shape, or the literally four legs and a piece of plywood, to your point, a tabletop are all you need in some spaces. And you can actually quite easily get custom pieces of wood cut at a very reasonable price. And if you did have like a stair landing, I had was one that sometimes is a very unused space in people's homes, lofts, like even guest room closets. You can take the doors off and paint it out white or whatever color floats your boat. You can even kind of nook yourself into something like that?
So many people record podcasts in their closet. Definitely doing that. Like right now, I am in my basement recording because it has the best sound, but I am sitting at my sewing machine table. So I have one of those sewing machine
Oh.
things where the machine can drop down into the base of the table. So you have a flat surface on top, and then you pull it back up when you
Mm-hmm.
want to use the machine. So you have like a cutting surface, but it's a very small, tiny little desk, but it has a folding top that unfolds to give you more space. And this is actually the space that I work out of in the summer. This is my desk in the summer when my office is too hot.
Ah.
I come down here and it's usually a good 5 degrees cooler in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like this little table takes up barely any space, but I can unfold it. And I remember when I was little, my mom used to do something similar with her sewing table. It doesn't have to be like a desk from Staples or,
Mm-hmm.
something, some beautiful piece of mahogany corner office desk.
We cleaned out, most homes have like understair storage,
Hmm.
and we actually cleaned that out, painted it out a bright white to kind of make it feel a bit bigger. And my husband actually works out of there. Again, great acoustics. He loves that he can shut the door. And we mounted, his screen is mounted up high. Like we created the ergonomics, because I do think that's important if you're going to be spending
Hmm.
any amount of time there, is making sure that, ergonomically, whatever you need for your body, you set up. But it was a space that we thought, it wasn't that huge. And you go online, you can get a lot of inspiration. People are so creative with where they've come up with spaces, but a lot of it is places that you would have never even considered. And it becomes amazing, and this whole newfound spot for you to create or do what it is you do.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can get creative with it. And that's why I just really do believe like never let space be an issue. We're all creative people here.
Mm.
Like just take a moment and look around your living space and think creatively about how you could rejig things. You did mention ergonomics though, and that's
Mm-hmm.
another one. That's a big one. It's also not glamorous. It's right up there with tech. After doing this for 10 years, there are definitely parts of my body that feel it on a daily basis. And tech is a good place to sort of think about it because a lot of it is related to things like screen height and chair height. So when you're doing that whole tech setup, you do want to be very conscious of, is it at the right height for your eyes? Are you able to move around easily? Do you want to be able to stand while you work? There are a lot of people who like to have like standing desks. I saw somebody on Instagram who has one of those little under desk treadmills the other day. Anyway, there's all those things are things to think about, but even just things like how often do you use your mouse? Are you somebody who packages orders? Do you have an Etsy shop? Like, how do you do that? And if you're doing a lot of it, that's a lot of repetitive motion. And it's a lot of, are you standing? Are you grabbing things? Like all those types of things you have to kind of think about. And it can take a little while to get things situated to where they feel good and things just flow well. But if you don't pay attention to that stuff, you are going to pay for it with wrist pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back
Mm-hmm.
pain. And it's not pleasant.
No, it's and often like when you move into a new house, they'll say like don't make any major changes till you've lived in it to really understand how you move
Yeah.
throughout the house. And I do think if you're transitioning to a longer term, home office, work from home situation, that is something to consider, is for that first month or until you've logged, 120 hours. If you just keep a running list of things that you notice about your day, that I am going to the printer this many times, or to your point about packaging, that once a month I know I have to spend 6 hours packaging. And if you can kind of keep a running list for that first month or so, then revisit that and think about, then that's when I start to invest in the pieces, because you might not know until you've sort of gone through a full cycle of what your workflow looks like before the kind of stuff that you want to, where you want to spend your money, and stuff that's going to be important to make sure that you are set up and comfortable so you're not aching or feeling any of the pains.
Yeah. And if you think that you can work on your bed with your laptop, yeah, you can do that. You absolutely can do that, but you can't do it for a long time. It's one of those things that's kind of hard to think about because you can do it for days and months without feeling it. But then one morning you wake up and your neck hurts.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's just it's from years of sitting incorrectly or having your chin hunched down into your chest or whatever because you're looking at your laptop on your stomach, or your neck suddenly hurts because all you do is look down at your phone. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed it because I'm just starting to get old. But like how I work now is very different from how I worked even 2 or 3 years ago. Like I very rarely work in front of my laptop anymore, especially in the evenings. Like when I am doing computer work, I really want to be on my iMac. I
Mm.
want my big screen. I want to be sitting comfortably. Your eyesight changes. I don't enjoy having to flip back and forth between windows. I want all the windows on the screen in front of me so I don't have to keep fooling around, and I want things to be big
Yeah.
so that I can see them. And working on my laptop now is just not functional for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do have my laptop with me in the evenings, and I use it for things like, I might be on there I do it for very single task oriented things like
Mm-hmm.
replying to email or writing a blog post where I don't have to be in and out of different windows. But when I'm doing things that require like a lot of multi window operations and things like that, especially designing where I might have InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop all open at the same time and I'm dragging files back and forth. I can't do that on my laptop anymore. I hate it. So I'm in front of my big screen, which means that I'm sitting in a chair at my desk. Pay attention to that stuff. It's one of those things that just, it's cumulative. It's why it's called RSI, right? Repetitive stress injury. It's because it happens over the course of months and years. And then one day everything hurts.
Yeah. I think there's a sweet spot of getting on it early, but making sure you fully understand all your movements and what your day looks like so that you can kind of build your space around that.
Especially if you're somebody who is a physical maker. Because if you've given yourself an injury through your mouse or having a bad computer setup or something, that flows over into your ability to be able to draw, to be able to paint, to be able to knit. Your dominant arm, whichever it
Mm-hmm.
is injured, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, you have to pay attention to those kind of things.
I think that kind of leads a slight segue into just the idea of sort of organization and storage, because I do feel that was really key for me when I was
Mhm.
getting my office set up, is so that I could be flexible and move to the kitchen or move to a coffee shop, and so that ergonomically everything I had was in reach and where I needed it. It had to be organized, and I had to have the right storage for the right things so that they're kind of at my fingertips when I needed them. And that has made a big difference in my space, I know. I'm trying to port what I took from my old world. I had a stationery room in my old world that if I needed pens, there was a supply of pens and paper and so forth. And so
I
it
loved the stationery
was the
room.
best room.
I know.
It was fun, but I kind of recreated that obviously on a much smaller scale in my own office where I do regular stationery order when I need it, and so that I do have the things and they're in a certain spot and I have that ready to go. So I'm not kind of trying to make shift and using the kitchen scissors when I need them. I have office scissors and a stapler and a hole punch and all the little things that in the work that I'm doing, they're important to me. But having a space for that, I think, and knowing that that's a bit of an investment you have to make is a good idea.
Yeah, and to be totally honest, I don't believe in investing. This is just my opinion. I don't believe in investing a ton of money into that because as your business evolves, what you keep and what you need and the type of things that you have also evolves. So I am a big fan of finding things that like IKEA is a great place for that because it's very inexpensive and they have so many different pieces that you can use that can multitask.
Mm-hmm.
Secondhand stuff is great for that. Just and if you're creative and arty, you can sand things down, you can paint them, you can make them different colors to make things work. But yeah, when I think over the last 10 years how much the things that I do every day have changed, I'm actually really glad that I didn't invest a ton of money. It's not to
Mm-hmm.
say that I didn't have pieces to be organized. I absolutely did because I go a little bit squirrely if I can't be organized.
Mm-hmm.
But I just didn't spend a lot of money on it, or I looked for things that were very easy to multi-purpose. Those IKEA square bookcases. Do you know the
Yes,
ones
I
I mean?
have. I'm looking at mine right now. Yes. I don't even know what they're called, but I've got some double one that I can turn on its end or horizontal, vertical. I can put doors on it. Yes, that one. Yes.
are fantastic. You can, like you said, you can add doors, you can add drawers, you can turn them into whatever you want, and they're very inexpensive. A good filing cabinet is very useful if you run your own business. There's stuff that you have to file. You can get a short one. I have a little one that rolls under my desk, and rolls back out. Super useful.
Yeah, you know what? We ditched our filing cabinet. Like I had a filing cabinet, and I found I was just keeping too many things, and we've moved so much digital that I actually have just moved to sort of the magazine folder, those cardboard ones that I've got a label maker, and that's sort of where I keep. So I mean, I think it's a similar thing, but it was a piece of furniture in my life that I was like, I think I'm ready to let this go because I'm not in and out of it enough to warrant the real estate it took up in my space. And so, yeah, we kind of, I don't know, I got rid of our filing cabinet. But yeah, depending on the type of work you do, you might need one.
You need a filing system, basically. Is what I'm saying.
Good point. Yeah, you're right.
You're absolutely right. It could be, like you said, magazine holders. It could be a really cute box that you've got dividers in. Like there's tons of different things you could do. You and I went shopping to IKEA
We did
a few months ago because I have this closet in my office that, like, beware anybody who opened the door to that closet, because it was like there used to be this old radio program way back in the 30s. I think it was Fibber McGee and Molly, and they had this closet that every time it was opened, all you heard was all the things crashing out of the closet onto the floor. And I'm like, that's my closet. And even though it had a door that I could close, it used to drive me crazy that I knew what was behind that door. So a few months ago, we went on a trip to IKEA, and I had to do something about it. So I just got like a really simple, it was actually a bar cart is what I wound up with. And just having the shelves, I didn't have proper shelves in that closet, but having shelves that I could move really easily in and out. And I was able to organize all my food styling props on there. And it made a world of difference to my life. So like those little small things can really, really help. And IKEA's got those really, Michael's has them too. Those sort of artists rolling carts that you see everywhere. Those are fantastic. There's so many ways you can use those. My hairdresser uses one for all her hairstyling supplies. I know knitters who use them for their yarn and their needles, and artists use them for their paints and their markers and all their different tools. I've seen people put washi tape holders on them. Like there's so many different things you can do with those, and they are very, very reasonable price. I think you can get them for about $75, $80, something like that. And you can use them all over your house, and you can just move things. Like that's great if you don't have a lot of space, is to just put all your stuff on one of those little carts with wheels. And then if you're working in the kitchen, like at your kitchen table, you roll it out to the kitchen. And then when you're all done, you roll it back into a bedroom or a closet or something. Like stuff like that is really, really helpful to keeping yourself organized and keeping your supplies all in one place and allowing you to be mobile. Great if you have a roommate too, and the two of you are always kind of jostling for space.
And it can grow with, like, I know for me, I used it for a while, and now my son is using it for his craft supplies and his school stuff. Like you can pass it through the family because it transitions really well for kids organization as well.
Yeah, those are a really great little investment that lets you be mobile.
I also think going, when you're talking about storage and organization, use your wall space. Like if you don't have a lot of space, so if you're using, even like some people have their offices set up in their bedroom. So you've got, maybe one little wall in your bedroom where your desk is. And if you don't have a lot of room for a filing cabinet or shelves, like go vertical, go up. And, floating shelves are really easy. Again, IKEA is a great spot for them, but, whether you're handy and you make them yourselves or not, but make use of the space right up to the ceiling if you need to. Like if you have stuff that, you only access once a month when you're doing your shipping, or maybe when it comes to paperwork or administration or something, and you just don't have the space around you, just don't forget to look up and take advantage of all of that space that is not being used right now that could really be very valuable storage space for you.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely use from floor to ceiling in my space. And don't forget to decorate your walls too. Like maybe this is a fun one to kind of wrap up on. What is your favorite thing in your office? Like that makes you happy when you go in?
Oh, you know what? It's my kids' artwork. Like my son, he's done some of these, really like anyone with young children, my son is 9, so like they start doing these art projects at 3, and it's, you've got a lot of finger painting stuff. And I've said before, you got to sometimes hide some of that stuff in the recycling bin. But every once in a while, he has done some really cool projects, mostly on canvas, which is fun for kids, I think. I don't know, canvas was not a thing that I could access as a kid, like to do art on. And now, birth of dollar stores,
Yeah.
canvas is
Everywhere.
spectacular and so easy to hang and looks really fun and colorful on a plain wall. Like it's I don't know, it just elevates the piece. But he's done some really great, like I treasure an art project he did with my sister when he was really little. And she was so smart. She's so creative. And she taped off some pieces on a canvas, and he just went crazy with color and did this and that. I think there's a handprint and stuff. And then she, peeled the tape off with all these neat borders, and it was so cute. And he's done really bright. So just having those pieces on my wall brings me joy. I think it feels very personal. Again, coming from a space where like my degrees were up on the wall, and it was like your certificates in financial planning were on the wall. Like it was just very almost sterile. It like great and accomplishment focused, awesome, but it didn't have that levity to it and personal connection. So I would say for me, the art in my office is what I love the most. And I've recently added greenery, which I didn't have live, not plastic, live, real ones I have to keep alive, to my office. And man, that is so...
That's a game changer.
Wow. Like it just feels so professional, and it feels very... I don't know, it does truly bring life. It's fun. I like taking care of the plants now in my office, and yeah, it just brings, I don't know, it just takes it to a new level that says, when I come in here, this is my space to work and it's mine. And the art from my kid and the plants are definitely my 2 cherished pieces. How about you?
Yeah, I have a couple. One is, so I grew up in the 70s and early 80s. And my parents used to watch the Mary Tyler Moore Show every week. And she had a big M that followed her through all her apartments. It was always on the wall. And because I was little and my name starts with an M, I was always fascinated by this M. Like I thought it was so cool. She had an M. Years ago, when I was working corporate, we shared a building with one of our regional offices. And they moved to a new building, and sort of all the decor, the office decor, branding and everything like the corporate offices have when you walk in. One of the things that they had was this giant, was the name of the chains in giant letters, like cutout letters that were sort of 3D, three-dimensional kind of thing. And when they left all these letters, and there was an M in there, and I went and stole the M.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And the M is in my office. It's right above my my computer, so I can look up, and it's done in like a cursive kind of italic font. And I don't know if anybody knows I have that M.
They do now.
But I love it. It makes me very happy. It's like it's my Mary M, my Melissa M. And then that same wall that it's on also has is full of artwork. Some of it's mine. Some of it is pieces that I've bought, and some of it is stuff that other artist friends have done and given to me. And I just like being able to look up at the wall and see the work of all these people who I really like or who I really admire. And I don't know, that just makes me happy.
I love that.
I bought a string of like fairy lights from the dollar store.
Oh, cute.
Those ones that are on like a little battery pack,
Totally.
And I just have them strung over all the different pieces of art on the walls. I don't know. I love that. It makes me happy, especially on a cloudy day. And just being able to turn those lights on really just cheers me up. So I love doing that. And I have some plants as well. Plants really, I don't know. You said they make it feel professional, but I think to me they feel more like, oh, this is my lived-in cozy space.
I know. I don't know. There's something you know what it is? Maybe it's a professional. It feels grown up. It feels more like I have a responsibility. I don't know, because I think about all the times of like working through college or kind of when I first started a career and having a home office. And I don't know, there's just something, it feels very intentional. And yeah, I don't know. I think of like a corporate waiting room when you walk in and there's like really nice plants around. That's what it makes me think of. So yeah, that's funny.
But I do like having them. They make me, they just, I don't know, there's just something, they're green and they're organic. Offices can feel very unorganic.
Hmm.
So it's just bringing a little bit of Mother Nature into your space, which I really like.
There's
So
something about like if I'm not feeling it and I need to go in and work, there's something about when I kind of do the whole, like I light the candle, I put the aromatherapy on, I bring the tea that kind of smells up the room as well. And there's like, and I put I'm a big fan of having instrumental music on, like not, I can't have anything with words and it has to not really be anything I know, but I'm not really looking to like, I'm not looking for like spa or nature sounds or classical music, but just sort of really like that coffee house, just mellow music. But when I kind of take the time to do those things before I get into my work, I just, even if I'm struggling with something, I feel like my stress and anxiety don't get as high as they could when I'm just feeling it like that ambiance, that feeling the calmness of my space, and I've sort of invested intentional thought into how I've set it up. I find that makes a huge difference in the experience.
yeah, absolutely. Spotify has so many great like deep focus and coffee shop type soundtracks. But I also have like an 80s soundtrack,
Yeah.
that I put together that I like to listen to on like Fridays. That's like my happy go-to music. There's no Lionel Richie or any of the sappy 80s music on it. It's just a good 80s music.
Just good 80s. I think those are the things though that you can do even if you're working from the kitchen table or if you're like working from a nook, right?
Spotify on anywhere. You can put a plant on your dining room table.
Those are the small things that I think you'll find will make a huge difference.
And headphones. One of my girlfriends for a long time had to share an office space with her husband because they both worked from home. And she's like, headphones are what keep our marriage alive.
Oh, that was a new find for me. You're so right about that. I never really thought about it until I started working in more coffee shops. Working from home, though, I have mine on quite often to block out the noise of the rest of the world going on behind me.
He's like, I don't need to hear his conference calls and he doesn't need to hear my music. And,
Yep.
That's their compromise because reality is quite often you have to share your space and it's not just yours. And so you got to find little hacks that you can develop so that you can keep the peace.
Exactly. No, that's true.
So I think that's probably it for this episode.
Yeah, I love hearing again. Like I think we should do a studio, maybe even like a visual tour of our own offices. We should probably think about doing that. But I'd love to see other people's spaces and yeah, kind of. I mean, we've talked about how fun we like sort of looking behind the curtain as to how people's home office setups are. So
it's such a nerd. If you want some great, like Pinterest is obviously a great place to go for inspiration, but another really great spot to go is YouTube and just search for studio tours. There's all kinds of art channels and creative channels on YouTube where once a year they'll go and they'll do like a tour of their space and show you, and you'll get so many ideas from that, especially if you can find somebody who does something similar to what you do. But even like people who do things completely different from you, I just like seeing them because you never know what's going to twig an idea in your head from an organization perspective or just a layout perspective or a small space. One thing, if you're dealing with a smaller space where you do have to share or you just don't have a lot of physical space, check out some of the younger YouTubers, the ones who are, I mean, it sounds crazy, but the ones who are like 16, 17, 18, or who are just fresh out of high school and are going to university or something, because they are in tiny spaces. And some of the stuff that they do is very creative. So yeah, some of them are just in their bedroom at home. Some of them are sharing with multiple roommates, and just see what they've done, because you'll get some really great ideas if you're struggling with, if you don't have the luxury of a room where you can shut the door or things like that.
Exactly. Next week, we're actually back continuing sort of on the lines of the, working from home concept. And we're going to talk about managing distractions, because with that, when you're talking about having roommates or working with your spouse, headphones. Yeah. So we're actually going to dive a little deeper into some tips and tricks on how, you and I both do it, and sort of some of the ways that others have found that are best to manage the distractions, because there are many, and not just the loud ones, things like the laundry and the fridge. We'll tackle all the different kinds.
Yeah, that should be a fun episode to do too.
Awesome. Well, it sounds great. Well, it's lovely chatting to you.
It was lovely chatting to you too. In this time of social distancing, we haven't seen each other in forever, and I'm sure lots of you out there are feeling the exact same way. But hopefully we brought our voices to your ear today and made you feel a little more connected. Yeah, so we will be back next week. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you could stop by wherever you listen to your podcasts and leave us a star rating or write a review. That really helps people find us. And we launched our website actually a few weeks ago, andshelookedup.com. You can head over there. We have all the show notes for all the episodes. You can learn a little bit more about me and Lisa. Yeah, we've got lots of tips and tricks and resources over in those show notes. They turned into full-fledged blog posts.
They're awesome. Yeah, I think those are great. And anytime we talk about something or mention a book or a website or something, you should find all the links there. So definitely pop over to andshelookedup.com.
All right, everyone. We will talk to you next week.
Great. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. Be sure to check out the show notes for any links or resources we talked about in this episode. If you enjoyed the chat, please be sure to subscribe and you will automatically be notified when the new shows are released. And we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a review, tell us where you're listening from, or even just send a note to say hi. You can find us at andshelookedup.com or on Instagram under And She Looked Up. Thanks so much for listening.